All right, now we are learning. Well, let's start a new mimer over here. We finished the first mimer that talked about Moses. Moses has the power to inspire the Jewish people and to wake the Jewish people up to reality, and that the Jewish people should be able to see and feel and and love and fear and be excited about God, just like they were at Mount Sinai, but in a permanent way and in a practical way. That's the job of Moses. And in fact, he even elevates the angels, we said. Remember, that's what we said, that's Moses has this thing called dot, connection. He has a special talent to connect Jews and through them the whole entire world to the creator of the universe, who's creating all of us all the time for a purpose. And that's what we learned yesterday. That's what we learned for the last 2 days. Now let's learn a new mimer. At the end of this week's Torah portion, near the end, it says, if there's a sentence that talks about the blessings that the Jewish people are going to get if they do God's commandments. So one of them, it says, Lo tiyem shakela v'akara b'artzecha, et mispar yomecha amalei. It says that there will not be, hey, 1 second, there we go. Yeah. There will not be a mashakela. A mashakela is a woman who gives birth, but her children die. That's a mashakela. Shakela. Or akara is a woman that doesn't give birth at all. She doesn't give birth. A barren woman. So it ends up that both of them end up being barren from children. Neither one has children, but one is a woman who gives birth to children and the children die, and another one is a woman who doesn't give birth at all. So there's a blessing. It says there will not be such a thing in your land. Lo tiyeh mashakila, there will not be a bereaved or a barren woman in your land. At mispar yamecha yamalei, and the same thing to you. You won't die early either. The number of your life, the days of your life, I will fill. I will fill. Your days will be filled. And of course, ostensibly, this is talking about before Mashiach comes, or in the days when Mashiach comes, but before the raising of the dead, because the raising of the dead, or maybe it's talking about the raising of the dead, and everybody's lives will be full. So let's see. Okay, now also, let's see what this means to us now. Good, it's very nice. God is going to do these wonderful things. But the purpose that we're here is not just to wait for things that God is going to do, but to do something to bring those blessings. And not only that, to bring those blessings, the way to bring those blessings is by simulating those blessings. We have to make a vessel that is fitting to the content. The content is the blessings of God, and that there won't be a bereaved woman or a barren woman, and that no one will die early. Everybody's lives will be filled. Your lives will be filled. So we have to do as much as we can now, and then God will do miracles and fill the rest. So here we go. Let's go. What has this got to do with us, me and you? Behold, Modazot, it's known. Make this a little bit bigger here. 1 minute. 1 minute. Behold, it is known. Behold, it known. Modazot, it is known. Sheyesh lamaila bechinas eretz achayim. It says there will not be a barren woman or a bereaved or a barren woman in your land. What does it mean in your land? Only in Israel there won't be. Okay, true, all the Jews will live in Israel, but what does it mean in your land? So the Rebbe said, and what about Jews that go outside of Israel for temporarily or whatever? But anyway, why does it have to say in your land? Just say, listen, if all the Jews are going to be in Israel, so just say there won't be any barren woman. There won't be. That's pretty good. Why does it have to say in your land? So it says, the fact is that there's also an upper land. An upper land. Just like here in this physical world, the land is the foundation, and from it grows everything. So in the spiritual worlds, there's also a land, and from it everything grows. But here the land is below us, and there the land is above us. Everything is growing down. So it says also in the spiritual worlds, there's what's called Eretz HaChaim, the land of life. Shememena, that from it, Nishpa Chaim comes life, umazon, and food, l'klalot neshamas Yisrael, to all of the Jewish people. Now, what are the Jewish souls? What do they need? Right? What do they need? They don't need money. They don't need water. They don't need bread. The souls, what do they need? They need feeling of God. Ahav, to love God, to appreciate God. Lasot, kol mitzvotov, and to be inspired to do His commandments. Asher yaseh adam v'chai b'hem, it says that a person will do them and live in them, chaim emiti, true life. Dugmas eretz halazu, like this physical world, a gashmit, shit samacha kol minei megadim, that from it grows all of the produce, all of the fine delicacies or whatever to eat, lahachayot b'hem nefesh kol chai, that we live from. Water, bread, the fruits, vegetables, Chaim Gashmi, physical life. V'zulata, and without the land, Ein Kiyum the highest, there's no life. The Kol Adarim Alel, to everyone who lives in a desert. No one lives in the desert. And the people who do live in the desert, they have to go into the city regularly to get food. Or they eat animals or whatever, that the animals find somewhere to pasture. Because it won't help all the money that you have, v'zav, silver and gold, in gold and silver, if there's no growth from the land, if there's a famine, then there won't be anything to eat. So all of your diamonds and your gold and your palaces and your power, or your armies and everything aren't worth anything. And also all the spirit, that's the way it is in the physical world. Also the same way in the spiritual worlds, and nimshach la'adam, which draws down to a person. Okay, now in this world nowadays, the main thing is just physical. Everything is just physical. What happens in the world is physical. Everything is physical. You get spiritual, it's already, not practical. Spiritual is not practical in this world. Says the Rebbe exactly the opposite. The fact of the matter is that we don't appreciate that everybody agrees that life is the main thing. Right? If the physical is the main thing, so it's no big deal to kill someone, which that's the way it's becoming now in this world. Because the person is still there. It's just the soul is not there. Nobody knows what a soul is. So says the Rebbe, the fact of the matter is you have to have a body, 100%. But the main thing is your soul. Your soul, a dead body, you bury him, right? You put him in the ground. A dead person, so because there's no soul. The soul is really the valuable thing. That's what puts value into it. The soul. It says there's a source, just like the body has to have food, the soul also has to have food, and that's the Jewish people are here to teach the whole world how important the soul is. But it has to have proper food. It has to have a proper appreciation of God. And if you don't have a proper appreciation of God, then either you don't believe in God or you get the totally wrong idea of God, which is all the religions in the world, basically. So there has to be a spiritual feeling. Now, the Jewish people also depend on this inspiration from what's called the spiritual land, the land of life. Also the spiritual life that's drawn down to a person with Torah and service, to be inspired to serve the Creator by doing His Torah and His commandments. We're talking about the Jews here, but also the non-Jews also have 7 Noahide commandments. In other words, to live your life for the Creator, you have to have an inspiration. And everything comes by means of this, what's called the land of life, Eretz HaChaim Elyonim. Like it says, Ba'artzot HaChaim. It says we will walk in the lands of life. Okay, what does it mean, lands of life? He says, Hainu ki yesh eretz ilav elish tato. In the spiritual world, there's the upper and lower land. Hainu Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people, the Le'elav above, and Knesset Yisrael, the Tata, and the Jewish people below. Ki gam l'mayla, also, there's also Knesset Yisrael, ki Yisrael olav machshava, the source of the Jewish people from above, and the immediate point of issue of the life of the Jewish people. So that there's the 2 levels of spiritual life as well. In any case, this is all called the whole business of the spiritual influence and inspiration and awareness that we get of the Creator It's all this is called land. It all grows from there. Kikamu, or it's just like this physical land. In koach tzemicha, it doesn't have any power to grow on its own. Elamina zuria, only when you plant something in it, koach tzemeach, that you put inside of it, the osmimeno va'al yada nigmal benitzvach, things grow up. For instance, the desert is also land, but nothing grows out from the desert. Why doesn't nothing go out to the desert? Because there's no water, and there's no it's not it's not fertile, and nobody plants anything there. Kachayim, also the same thing is spiritual. Hanim shachim, which is drawn down from this what's called eretz achayim, the upper source of life. Heim nimshachim and makor chayachayim, they come from the source of life of God. Kihu anoten koach, that God is the one that gets, just like the rain has to come into the land. Also, this upper land that we're talking about, in order for it to have blessings, it has to come from God, the creator of this upper land. That's our service. Just like in the physical world, you have to plow and plant and fertilize the ground in order for it to grow. Also, in the spiritual upper land, so it shouldn't be a desert, we also have to plow and to plant and to fertilize. Like it says, or zerul tzadik. So in other words, we have to be the instigator in this whole business. There is the upper land, and it has the potential of being fertile, but we have to fertilize it, or at least encourage God to fertilize it, and we have to plant seeds, and we have to plow in this upper spiritual world, because it's concealed, just like the ground is hard. You can't plant anything unless you plow it. So also this upper, your soul, so to speak, is hard, and you have to plow and then plant. Plowing, we'll see, but plowing means basically stopping doing bad things, stopping being selfish, stopping being egotistical in a false way. Planting means doing good deeds, saying good words, thinking good thoughts. That's called the planting of the tzaddik. All the Jews are called tzaddikim. So they, so to speak, they're the Jewish people, they're the farmers of this land, this upper spiritual land. That one we call them tzaddikim. Tzaddikim means righteous. All the Jews are righteous. This word tzaddik, eno shem haTorah, it's not just a title, a shem haTorah. Shem HaTorah, the Tanya, also in the first chapter of the Tanya, there's what's called a name of something, and then there's excuse me, what do you call it? A convenience name and a title. A title. For instance, the child in the class in the second grade, he's the strongest one of all, so everybody calls him Samson. Everybody says he's the strongest. He's, the strongest one in the class. He's called strong, but he's only called strong in relation to the others. But he's not truly strong. What is truly strong? What does that mean, truly strong? I don't know. Is there such a thing? Truly strong? He says, yeah, truly strong, that's God. God is truly strong. In other words, there's nothing stronger, incomparably stronger, the source of all strength. He's the source of all strength. The same thing, a person, if you want to call a person that's really a strong man, it means that somehow or other he's the source of strength. He's a strong person. A person can be strong lifting up weights, right? He's a strong person. But when it comes to defeating himself, he can't fight against his own depression, his own aggressions, his own lusts, his own, right? Like we just had Achashverosh, we're going to have it soon. Ruled the whole world, couldn't rule over himself. So he's not really called strong. So there's what's called Shem HaTorah, a tzaddik. A person is a tzaddik means that he's more righteous than I am. It means he's more righteous than everybody else. No, that's not what it means. A person that's really a tzaddik means Eno Shem HaTorah. Dahainu Madrigas Tzaddik Emiti. This is what's called really a level of a tzaddik, which is explained in another place. A tzaddik essentially is a person that's attached to the Creator. It's not relevant to what other people think or other people are. A tzaddik is a person that's attached all the time to the Creator, thought, speech, action, love, fear, faith, all the time to God. Ella, but Ratzon Lomar means to say, Dargas Adam, a level of a person. I'm sorry. When it says Amech Kulam Tzadikim, it doesn't say that all the Jewish people are tzaddikim, they're all truly righteous. It means that everyone's a level of a tzaddik. Adam Kasher. When they say that all the people, the Jewish people are tzaddikim, it means that they are potentially to be purely connected to God, but it also means that they're tzaddik, means that they don't do bad things. Like it says, tzaddik v'rasha lo k'omar. Whereas a person is a tzaddik because he does good things, he thinks good, not how he feels. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun over here. So it says all the Jewish people are tzaddikim, means all the Jewish people have the ability to do, speak, and to think good, to control themselves, to do good and to bad. That means that's also called a tzaddik. Nevertheless, doing and speaking and thinking good, that's planting seeds. That's planting seeds in the upper world. And what grows out of it is love. The love of God, v'tshukatoa, love, and the thinking and the desire for God, hanimshach, which is drawn down to a person. Hinehu zerua ba'oretz hachayim. This is planted in the upper world for the tzaddik. Hainu liot tzaddik u'makusha d'Hashem, that a person can really truly be a tzaddik for Hashem. In other words, first of all, a person forces himself. He does good deeds, and that plants the seed, and from that grows inspiration, light, the dovkabot, to cling to God. That you really start to feel the Creator. This a person can put to his heart, then he will know the yamin be'amunah shlema, and he'll believe that all love and fear which is drawn to a person, who all inspiration that's drawn to, all of a sudden a person, you feel inspired. Who matat Hashem, it's a gift of God. Shenoten koach, that he gives power. Hatzomeach, he's the one that gives this power of growth in the upper land. Latzmiach, to give birth to love of God, the yirato, and his fear. The enom nimshachim mikoach adam, it doesn't come from a person that does himself. I think you can see this pretty much in everywhere. You get, let's say, for instance, musicians. Take an example, musicians, right? Just a simple, a very mundane example, right? There could be that there's, let's say, 10,000 people that they play violin. And let's say from all these 10,000 people, 20,000 people, there's 500 of them that really practice, right? They have a talent. They like music and they practice music. But from all those people, maybe 5 of them come out to be genius, even though they all practice the same. And it could be that they all have the same, all of a sudden there's 5 of them, 10 of them, whatever. It just flows, right? The same thing with piano, with any type of music. The same thing with sports. Same thing with mathematics. There's certain people that they are just geniuses. It just comes to them. Where does it come to them? So a person can say this, that because it's me, I did it, I worked. But we see rich people, right? There's people that are rich. They work exactly as hard as everybody else. They have the same IQs, and one guy becomes a billionaire, and the one guy becomes a millionaire, and another guy gets by. He's a professor. The last guy, he's a professor. He's a professor in economics. He makes and he makes 1,000th of what a guy is not the professor. He just has a sense. It's just a sense. Where does this come from? Where does it come from? It's a gift of God. You prepare the land. You do what you have to do, and God does the rest. Don't think I am smart. I am successful. I am great. I am right. This is all these gifts that God gives to you. Everything. Says the Rebbe, especially loving and fearing God, loving and fearing, having an appreciation of the Creator of the universe, that God is really creating me, and to really feel that and appreciate that, it's a gift from God. Just like the same thing, you plant food, you plant seeds in the ground, right? No matter how fertile and that the ground is, if the crops come up, that's not the ground and it's not your work that did it. Your work was just made the vessel, but the blessing really came from God. Say the same thing. It was also in the upper land. That a person works and he controls himself and he does good deeds etc. In order for him to have an inspiration for God, and also for him to have the inspiration to work on himself, and all this comes from God. If so, all of the main service that a person does for God should not be that I love God for myself. That I am the one that's loving God, I am the one that's serving God. But rather, like it says, that you have to serve God. Pirish, what does it mean? Lefi pshuto, ain't moving. It doesn't make any sense. What does it mean that God needs your service? What does he need? He wants a cup of coffee. Bring me a cup of something. God is lacking. Who is berech lavoda so tzarich? He needs v'klum chaser. Anything is missing. God. What does it mean serving God? What do we have to serve Him? We're waiters. We're in a restaurant. God needs something. There's something He doesn't have. In sedakta mati tenlo. If you do good deeds, what does that add to God? God is creating you. God is creating me. What am I giving to God? Ella, what does it mean? So, but on the other hand, it says we have to serve God, and you have to serve God with happiness. It says. Ella, inyan, ki havaya, yud, ki vav, ki. What does it mean when we serve God? It means hoya, hava, v'yiya, past, present, and future. God creates all being, past being, present being, future being, all that exists and will exist and ever did exist is being created by God. As we've said so many times before, God doesn't really exist. God creates all existence. God's existence is indefinable because there's no definition to it. We just know God does things. He creates everything, things that God does. God gives us life. We know He does, but we can't have any idea. It's ridiculous to even think we can have an idea. It's like, a rock has no idea what calculus is. That's a stupid thing to say, right? Okay, so it doesn't know what calculus is, but simple addition, or what about a rock? I tried to explain to this rock, simple addition, one I've been over this thing 50 times, the rock doesn't get it. That's ridiculous. It's the same thing as ridiculous to say that we don't understand what God is, no matter how we try. But we can understand a little bit. Why can we understand a little bit? Because God commanded us. A commandment. Shema Yisrael means to understand. Understand, Jews, that God is our God. So because there's a commandment, so a little tiny bit we can understand. But we have to understand that God is past, present, and future at once. He's creating everything. Vani Hashem, I am God. Lo shaniti, I never changed them. Next page. Excuse me 1 second. Yeah, what happened? My microphone isn't working. 1 minute over here. Back to the video. There we are. This is working, I hope. Let's try to see here. No, 1 second. It's driving me crazy. Here we go. Well, excuse me 1 minute. Okay. And everything in front of God is like nothing. All right, let's not get out of hand. What are we talking about? It says there will not be a bereaved or a barren woman in your land. Says the Rebbe, this is also referring to the upper land, the source of our loving, fearing, perceiving faith in God. That's called the upper land. And the land we have to work down here in the world, we're serving God. And by our service, that plows the land. So it says, what does it mean to serve God? What, God needs something? God never changes. God doesn't need anything. Like we said before, God doesn't exist. Everything comes from God. What does it mean that we have to serve Him? Everything in front of God is nothing. Like I've said before, it's like Donald Duck telling Walt Disney what to do. He's creating him all the time. How could it possibly be? How can we have any effect whatsoever on God? So it says, this is tiye etzelechem bebechinas elokechem keilu How can it be that God will be like our God? As Hainu says, that's the idea that that's the whole idea of serving God. Serving God means that God is so infinite and so incomprehensible that he has no care about the world. That's the essence of God. That's the idea of serving God, that this aspect of God should be relevant to us. It should grow. Hainu sheyiyeh shura v'kavua b'moach v'machshava. That the infiniteness of God, as incomprehensible as it is, but the fact that God exists is undeniable, and we don't feel it. Says that's the whole idea of feeling God. That's the idea of working, serving God, serving God. Ke'ilu, making it as though that God is ours, that we feel it. Shenitfas b'seichlo, that we can feel God really in our mind. Ke'ilu ein avrus, as though we see godliness. Begila elokuso mamash. That's what it was in the holy temple. It says the Jews would go there to see and to be seen. To be seen, we understand. They would go there to be seen, that God would see everyone coming to the holy temple. What does it mean to see? That everyone would see and feel that they're being created. Everyone would see and feel how good God is. But you had to have work. Similar, this is the whole idea of serving. Serving God means working on this, on the ground, on this upper land, so that it becomes fertile, that it grows from it this faith in God and feeling a sense of how good God is and how powerful God is. Alder says also, this is the whole idea of the praises that we praise God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Abraham. Hagadol, God, you are great, you are powerful. That we're praising God and we're saying how great God is and how amazing God is, that's talking about how God brings himself down into this world. That's talking about how God, so to speak, lowers himself and makes himself accessible to us, like plants grow out of the ground. So the awareness of God grows out of this upper land we're talking about. Because really in front of God, everything is absolutely nothing. And that which God can lower himself down to the point where we can say that God is infinite. This is a humility of God. This is how God can make himself low. It's like the college professor or something playing with little kids in the street, his little grandson or something like that, crawling on the ground with him. It's coming down. Oh, his grandson says, "Wow, Grandpa really knows how to crawl." It's the same thing, God coming down so that we can say, wow, God is infinite. That's God coming down to us. That's what we call serving God. Serving God means that we make God accessible, that God reacts, so to speak, to what we do and becomes accessible to our mind and to our heart. This is the whole idea of up and down. Before that, we have no sense of God, so there's nothing up and nothing God. There's just no godliness at all. So the whole idea is that mikan ikar hatchala milamayla mata. So this blessing comes from above to below to us. That's what's called the growing from the upper land, from the Eretz HaChaim. This is a very, very difficult service. That a person's physical mind can receive and grasp the revelation of God. And there was that I should feel that I can talk about it. I can talk about it here. I'm reading what the Rebbe says, but I should actually feel that my whole existence is a big miracle from God, and that I have nothing basically of my own, except for God's blessing, that I am able to appreciate God more. And that appreciation, that's called serving God. From this is aroused the aspect of love and fear. And this is called giving birth. Okay, so for those of you who just came in, we're expounding. The Rebbe is talking about a sentence that says in the Bible, in this week's Torah portion, that God is promising the Jewish people that if they do what he wants, So there won't be any bereaved women or barren women. Lo yeh meshakela v'akara. There won't be any bereaved meshakela is a woman who gives birth and her children die. And akara means women that don't give birth at all. There won't be any like that in your land. And the Rebbe says, why in your land? Just say that there won't be any. Why does it have to say in your land? So the Rebbe says this is talking about also spiritual. And the true giving birth is to give birth to love of God and fear of God and faith of God in your soul. And it has to be a thing that you give birth to, just like the ground grows up the plants and wheat and trees, is also from the upper land, it also grows down into this world, love and fear of God. Right? From the physical land, it grows up things that nourish us. From the spiritual land, there grows up things that nourish our soul, love and fear. But we have to work on the land. Working on the land means that we have to work on ourselves and that we have to try to love God and fear God. And this, so to speak, plows the ground and plants the seeds. And from that gives birth to love. The Cana, love and fear. This is also, love and fear is also called son and daughter. Son and daughter. Loving God is usually the masculine aspect, and fearing God is the feminine aspect, the son and the daughter. We're giving birth. Our soul gives birth. Sha'ava yubin, that love is the level of male, masculine. Like it says, Zachar Chazdo. It says, like, remember, but Zachar also means male, is kindness. V'yira and fear, this is the level of bat. V'zeu, that's what it means. Bat techila siman yafel banim. Right? It could be maybe, I mean, I'm just thinking, but it could be maybe now, all this whole movements in America of gender change and gender confusion and gender this is because people don't have a conception of what God really is. Because God is feminine and masculine. In other words, loving God is masculine and fearing God is feminine. And God is always in the Torah referred to masculine, and the world is feminine, or the soul is feminine, because the soul receives. So this giving and receiving aspects, right, they exist absolutely, objectively, totally in reality. That's what reality is. But because people don't have a connection to reality, could be that's the whole reason why there's this whole confusion. People think that they're God and that they can then, and which is not true. And so everything becomes confused. But says the Rebbe, it's not so. Our job is to give birth to male and female. And we have to work on the land. The male and the female, that's love and fear of God. That's what it says, is there's a daughter first. You give birth to a daughter first. This is a good sign for sons. What does it mean? That first of all, you have to have fear of God. That's the daughter. Fear of God means awe, respect. You honor, right? God is very precious. I don't understand it, but I know you don't, right? Like someone says, be careful, that painting is a genuine Rembrandt. Be careful of it. It doesn't look like anything. Be careful. You don't appreciate a genuine, whatever it is, a Picasso, right? A Picasso looks terrible. It's a terrible picture. This thing, I'll throw it on my, don't throw it away. The thing is worth $500 million. Okay, that's called yira. You honor it. Honor, same thing with God. La'abdil, to separate a million separations. I'm just giving an example. God, this is a thing. This is a holy thing. Shabbat is a holy thing. We have to respect it. That's called fearing God. At least realizing it's not, that God is not like a how do you say, a dispensable item, right? It's something that's very valuable. That's fearing God. And after you have the proper respect for God and awe for God, first, kizeh ashar, this is the gate, it says, to serve God. You realize that God is greater than me, he's stronger than me, which is not the case if a person doesn't have fear in the beginning. That you want to have love and fear, this is lo tatzliach, it won't succeed. If you don't give birth, first of all, if you don't plant and you don't plow, you don't work on yourself, you don't have this basic fear of God, respect for God, then nothing is going to grow up. Nothing's going to happen. If you want to have a feeling of love of God, like you have a feeling like of loving money or something like that, right? That's going to give you a good feeling automatically. It's not going to work. A person has to first of all put his ego aside a little bit and not think about what I'm going to receive, and realizing that God is really infinitely greater and better and kinder than I could possibly imagine. That's a basic awe of God. And if you don't have that, then nothing's going to succeed. Lolam, you're not going to give birth to any love and fear. True. Ki'im dimyon Chabad. Just you'll imagine it, right? Like I'm reading in this mimer, reading about the ideas, so I can imagine, I can think that I have fear. Shu davar she'ein bo kiyum. It has no, it's not literally lasting. The famous case, I mean, there's just there was a famous case that was, I guess it was in the 20s or whatever, that there was a famous radio announcer or whatever, a movie maker. Anyway, so he, in the East Coast of America, he had this radio program where it was called The War of the Worlds. And he made up this thing that people were coming from Mars and attacking the world. And he made it up, but he didn't tell people he made it up. He said, I'm seeing, and he made it very real. I'm now speaking to the governor of New York. Oh, I don't know what's happening over here. Here's the chief of police over here. It seems that they're destroying. Anyway, everybody heard all these things on the radio, and there was people were really afraid. I mean, they did that pretty much nowadays with the corona and all that stuff. Everyone was just afraid. But it was a fear of something that didn't really exist. But you can have fear of an idea. You can arouse fear inside of you for an idea. Right? It can be an exaggerated fear. Maybe there's a little something with the fear, and then they blow it up and they exaggerate it, or maybe there's just absolutely nothing whatsoever. It's the same thing. You can have the love and fear of God just from ideas. God is creating me, but you don't really feel it. And it doesn't last long. As soon as something comes that catches your eye, you go after it. Catches your heart, you go after it. It says that don't turn after your eyes and your heart. It's one of the 6 common commandments. Because you don't really feel God. El Lefisha, it's only temporary. If you don't have a basic awe of God, then you could give birth to love and fear, but it's not really real. It dies easily, and that's what's called bereaved. That's what's meshakela. The akara, that what we say that there won't be any bereaved women, means that we'll have love of God and it won't go away. It'll be genuine. And akara, what does it mean? There won't be a barren woman. He thinks about God, but absolutely nothing comes out of it. Says that won't be. That's the blessing. That there won't be any meshakelah, there won't be any barren women. Who's the women? The Jewish people. There won't be any Jewish person that's a meshakelah. He gives birth to love and fear, but it's not of God. In other words, a real, a genuine appreciation of God, but it's not real. It's not constant. Or akara, or that he doesn't give birth to love and fear of God at all. He reads all these ideas of Chassidut. He thinks nothing goes, right? Because the reason that there is such a thing as being bereaved, in other words, giving birth to having love and fear of God, but it just goes away after a minute or two, or akara, that you don't have any love or fear or appreciation of God whatsoever. In other words, God is just not real. Why do we have this? Is because kihem ba'artzecha. It's because in your land, einam boim me'eretz elyona. Because loya mashakila. Why? Because ba'artzecha. You think that you're the one that's giving birth to this love and fear. You think that it depends on you, but it doesn't. It comes from the upper land. Like we were saying before, a person who becomes a genius in music or whatever, it's not that he's the genius. It's a gift that's given to him. The same thing, loving and fearing God, which is more important. It's a gift to us from God. So no matter how much we learn Kabbalah, and no matter how much we fast and we pray and we learn the Torah, and we're really religious people, and we do all the commandments and etc. and everything we're doing, everything we're supposed to be doing. But if you don't if you're not genuine, it's not really genuine love of God. You're genuine about being religious. You like to be a part of a group. You like the security that it gives. You want to go to heaven. You want to go to heaven. You're not going to be like all those other right fools wandering around in the darkness. They're all going to burn in hell. That's called being selfish. You're doing it all for yourself. And so therefore, you're not going to have any really love or fear for God at all. You're just loving and fearing for yourself. You just believe that God is bigger. And so you're not having love. God is not really part of the whole thing, except this idea, like the war of the worlds. To have a genuine feeling that God is really creating us and that God is really infinitely good and how much he loves us, and to return this love, this is an amazing gift from God, and it comes from the upper land, God's land. But if you think it comes from artsecha, from your land, in other words, it comes to that it's all your doing, it says, therefore, it's not going to, either they won't give birth at all to love and fear, and if it does, then it's going to go away. There'll be things that are more meaningful to you. Okay, now, again, the Rebbe is talking about here a subject. He's talking basically, it's like explaining, beauty to blind people. Beautiful. We're blind, really. We have a sense that God exists, but because the Rebbe really sees it and he really feels it, so we know that it's really true, and we can find this in our soul. That's what we learned in the beginning. Remember the last few days that Moses wakes up the dot. He wakes up the connection to God. What do you mean connection to God? It's not like connection to music. There's certain people that have no sense of music. They just can't carry a tune. And but every Jew has a sense of God. Every Jew, without exception. We just don't connect to it. We don't feel that there is such a thing. Either we don't feel that there's God, we don't feel that God is good, we don't feel that God is capable. We don't feel it. Right? That's called the land. We have to plow the land. But the fact of feeling this love and fear of God, this should be the basis of life. This should be the basis of life. And as it is, what is the basis of life? That we feel ourselves. That's the basis of life. Everybody knows they exist. Right? This is a given, an axiom of life. I exist. Here I am. Right? What's good for me, I want. What's not good for me, I don't want. Everyone is sure that they exist. Everyone's sure that there's, but the Rebbe is trying to say that that's good to feel that you exist, but you should feel more that you're being created, that there's a creator. You love yourself automatically. People have no idea how much they love themselves, right? That's one of the big causes of the depression and aggression and all these things, because people just love themselves. And if I don't get what I want, I'm gonna then I feel bad. If I do want something, I feel lost. The people should feel, though, that in the fact that we're being created. We're being created. That's the fact we feel. And if you feel how good God is, then if you love yourself, you'll love God infinitely more. But we don't feel God. And this is the reason why, because we think that this feeling of God is a thing that's going to come from me, that I'm going to do it. And it's not so. It's a gift that comes from God. And that's what it says. And the reason that you don't have love and fear of God, or if you do, it goes away, you're bereaved of this love and fear of God, is because artsecha, you think it's all coming from your land. And it doesn't come from the Eretz Elyon, from the upper land. Says the Rebbe, there's another type of a barren woman, and this is what the rabbis say, ein lo vlad, afilu beit vlad ein lo. It says by Sora that she hasn't got any children, that she didn't have a womb. And this is a very difficult situation to be in. How can this be cured? We'll find out, God willing, tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow. Okay, now let us learn. Stop the share. Oh. All right. Stop the crimson.